think about our economic data set, our economic data set. And you remember what that was, right? We had monthly values of 3 economic indicators. You had jobs added, unemployment, and then you had GDP. Was that a question someone had? I heard something.
I was about to ask a question.
Okay.
You said joining is not going to be on the exam, but concatenation is?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks. That was my question. I
Okay.
thought you were saying both joining and concatenation wasn't.
Joining, we're not going to do. We're going to do joining starting on Thursday, and it won't be covered in the exam. So my question here, my use case on concatenation is, well, I want to create this data frame. I want to create a data frame where I extract the quarterly GDP values for 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2011. And I want to create a data frame where the row index is the quarter, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. The column index corresponds to the years. Okay, my question for my use case is, how can I do this starting with the data frame that we created using read CSV? So the one that we just went over where we use read CSV, the data frame 2. And so here, I think I printed that. Yeah, I printed that out here. So here was DF2 from our Jupyter notebook, where we specified that column 0 was my index and I wanted it to parse dates. And we can see our GDP values. Okay, and so my question, this use case that I want to solve here is, how do I do that? How do I go from having this in Pandas to this in the easiest way? Okay. Anybody have any questions about our task at hand here? I'm going to discuss this here, so I'm going to go over this, but I just want you guys to think about it and make sure everyone understands what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to do this, but let me just answer a question that I'm sure someone might ask me. I would not expect you to be able to do this on the proctored portion of the test. I would definitely expect you to be able to do this on the take-home portion of the test. So if that gives you any clairvoyance into the type of things I would ask, well, I hope it does anyway. So let's think about 2 different ways to solve this problem. The way I asked, which I will come back to in a second, which is basically I want to modify the existing data frame. But how could I do this if I was just reading in the data? How could I apply a method similar to what we did for homework 2 and a little bit in homework 3? How could I do this from reading in the data? What would I have to do? Right? When we think about what our data looks like, our CSV file that we read looks essentially just like this, right? We read it in using when we did the Pandas read CSV, it essentially just read it in exactly as it is. So you can sort of visualize this as a CSV file. So if I wanted to create this data frame, if I wanted to create this data frame from reading it in from a CSV, how would I do that? How would I do that? How would I do that?
So I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, these the middle columns, what are they representing?
When you say the middle column, this one?
Yeah, the first, second, and third column actually. That's
yeah. So this is our economic data set. So this is the month. This is the unemployment rate. This is the number of jobs added. Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So back to what I asked. So if you wanted to do this using the method that we did in homework 2 and homework 3, just in general, how would I do it? Well, I would have to design or think about writing code that would essentially, because remember, this is what our CSV file looks like, right? I could pull this up in my text editor, and what you would see is just month, comma, unemployment, comma, jobs added, comma, GDP, then a new row, and this month and day, comma this, comma this, comma this. So you can think of this as a CSV file. And so in doing that, what I would need to do is open the file, read the first line and throw it away because I don't care about this. Read the second line and keep the fourth token, which is this one, right? So if I read the fourth line, or second line, this would be the first token, second token, third token, fourth token. I don't care about any of these things. All I care about is this one, right? So I would do that. Then I would read the next 2 lines and throw them away, read this one and throw it away, read this one and throw it away. Then I would read this line and keep the 4th token. Then I would read the next 2 lines and throw them away. Then I would read the next line and keep the 4th token, and so on. Right? So I could design an algorithm that basically said, discard the first line, then process, you know, for 5 years, read a line, keep the 4th token, discard 2 lines, read a line, keep the 4th token, discard 2 lines, and so on. And so I could do that, and I could construct the data frame. I could construct the data set frame I want by just extracting those 20 values. Right? What I need is 20 values. I need four sets of quarterly data for 5 years. Right? And I could relatively easily do that. Okay? So that's something you should think about. I want you to think about how you would do that. Okay? But the method that I want to demonstrate is assuming that we start out with the data frame. Right? So assuming that we have this DF2 data frame, what do I need to do? Right, so how do I take the DF2 data frame and from that construct what I have referenced here as GDP data frame? Okay? And so what I want to talk about is the way that I would approach this problem. And you should think about approaching this problem. And let me make a note that most people, when they are faced with a problem like this, start the coding part way too early. They look at it and think about how to do it, and then they experiment with different parts of the code and experiment with different aspects before they're really ready to do that, before they've adequately thought about what has to be done. Okay? So what I would do when we do this is follow some steps. And first, notice that what I need here is in column, the GDP column. So I already have it in a Pandas data frame, which we've seen. Right? So the first thing that I would do is just extract the GDP column and then do a drop in A. So if I extract the GDP column as a series and do the drop in A, what do I end up with? Well, I end up with all of the valid GDP values. Okay? So then I recognize and say, okay, from that resulting series, you know, the first 4 rows is the 2008 data. Right? So maybe I can just extract the first 4 rows, and from that extraction, right, using a slicing operation, create a series that uses 2008 as the name, and then Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 as the row index. Okay? Then I would have 2008. Then I just replicate that for 2009 and 2010 and 2011. Because I know that I have the first 4 rows are 2008. So the next 4 rows are 2009. The next 4 rows are 2010, and so on. Okay? So then what I would end up with is 5 separate series. 1 series for 2008, 1 series for 2009, 1 for 2010, 2011, and 2012, and then I could concatenate those together along axis 1 and end up with my data frame. Okay? And so that is in code right in my data indexing example use case. And so as I mentioned, we are going to start with DF2, right? And so, well, I can show DF2 here. Let's just do head 10. There's the values. That's just the normal DF2 that we saw earlier. You can see that I have the index is set to month, unemployment rate. Here's my GDP values where I have my nans. So think about that first step saying, hey, let's grab all these guys, let's drop the NAs, and then let's store the resulting series, which I do right here, G. And we just look at the head value 6, and I say, okay, here's month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, month 6. And here are those floating point values representing GDP. So here's all of my 2008 data. As I said, that's the first 4 rows. So this is Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So I can just extract those using the iloc, which is the implicit slicing. So I'm taking this data series using the implicit slicing 0 to 4. And so what does this, so this thing I have highlighted right here, what would that return? If I were to just type g.iloc bracket 0 colon 4 close bracket, what is that? What would that return to me if I were to just type that in its own cell?
Phosphorus.
Exactly. It would return to me a series. And if that's confusing to you, you should try that. You should go in the code, insert a new cell, and just try that very thing. Because it's important to understand what these operations do, because we've combined several different operations, right? But that's exactly right. It will create a series that would be these values, okay? Then I'm going to use the values operator, the values component, which just says, okay, give me these guys. I just want these four as a numpy array. So what I end up with is my data is a numpy array of these four values. And then I just specify this is the index that I want to use for the series that I'm creating. And this is the name for that series. So when I execute the whole thing, I get a Pandas series that has Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 as my row index. My name is 2008. I can then replicate that for year 2. So in this case, I just incremented from 0 to 4, from 4 to 8. Now I have two series. Y1 is 2008, Y2 is 2009. Then I could use GDP, I could use concat, as I said, concatenate along axis 1, and it's giving me that concatenation. Now I have 2008, 2009 indexed by Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. And so the remaining task is just to add the other couple of years, add the other 3 years, 2010, 2011, 2012. Okay? Does that make sense?
Okay. Will we add the 2010, 2011, 2012 the same way we did 08 and 09?
Yeah, so here, if you look at what we did for 08, right? What did I do for 08? I took a slice of 4 values. I then extracted the numpy value. So I need to do that for all 5 years. The only thing that changes is what slice I take. This is saying take the first 4 values. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. This is saying take the first 4 values. This is saying take the second 4 values. Then for 2010, we would take the third 4 and so on. But the operation is the exact same, right? I'm taking the slice, the values, creating a series. The only thing that changes, the only 2 things that change is the slice parameters and the name I apply would change for those years, but everything else is the exact same.
I have a question.
Okay.
Can we slice using not implicit indexes, but datetime objects?
So can I, from here, say 2008 to 2000, well, it would be 2008 up to and not including 2009.
Yes.
You can, but I'm not sure how you would do it. I mean, we can, let's look and see. So if you just insert a cell below, and I just said, let's see, G loc 2008 0101. Maybe I have to use quotes like that, and then maybe colon 2008 1001, like that you could do.
Okay.
This is, to me personally, I mean, this works. And again, good. That's a great question. Make sure you understand why this works. This is a little bit more confusing to me because I have to remember, you know, it's the month 1 and, you know, then you know, month 10. So you have to remember the month that the GDP data came out, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
And in this one, I just know it's the first 4 values. But yeah, you can certainly do that. And there's also probably a way where I could just say extract the year value. Because these are date times, we know we can do a little bit of processing on the index, and we can say, I want to just see the 2008 values. And if you did that, the indexing would be a little bit more straightforward because you wouldn't have to remember what month the GDP data came out, right? You see what I'm saying about you have to remember that month is month 1, month 4, month 7, month 10. If you don't remember that, then you're not going to be able to get this index slice right. But if I could somehow just say the year of the index value is 2008, that would probably be more straightforward because rather than using the implicit indexing values. Other questions for me on this one?
I don't have a question about the concatenation, but I have a question about how to parse the date object into a datetime type.
That's,
Could you screw up? I think it's so.
Well, I mean, what we did is we told Pandas to do it. Right, here's what we did. We told Pandas use parse dates. We didn't do the parsing ourselves.
Yeah, so I mean, my question is, I think we didn't apply any function for the months column, right? But how can we parse it?
Okay, so again, let me answer that question 2 ways. The first way is what we're doing right here. And what we're doing is we're using Pandas, the module, its internal code to parse the dates. So we're not doing any coding, any parsing code ourselves. We're just telling Pandas to do it. And because this particular data set is well formed, Pandas is successful at it. You know, it was able to parse all of the dates for us and create date time. And so if you go to the Pandas help file, you will see exactly what the rules are for the parse date parameter. When you say parse the dates, and you tell it which columns to try to parse, you will see all the details of what happens when it can't and what method it applies and all of that.
Okay, so
If
you mean
we wanted to parse the dates, that's the second part. I'll answer your question in just a second, but let me just for completeness say, the second part, if we wanted to parse the dates, that's when we would have to use the datetime module where we did datetime, stirp time, strptime. Remember we did that function where we're doing parse time? And using the stirp time function, we can then create the datetime objects. So if we wanted to do it manually for whatever reason, we would have to read the data in and use the stirp time function into the datetime module before we created the corresponding Pandas data series.
okay?
So did you have another question about the Pandas implementation?
So what you mean is the parse -- it's not a customized variable name, right? It's like a built-in
Yeah, this is not customized at all. This is not, we did nothing other than specify this parameter.
Okay.
Say, hey, I want you to parse dates, the month column. We did nothing else. So if I don't have this, so if I just go in and delete this, which we didn't add, so if I just delete that and execute the code, okay, well, it's still applying the column 0, but they're not dates times anymore. They're just string objects. So now, you know, if I look at the month, it's just string objects, okay? But when I have the parse dates in there, it says, hey, he wants to parse these as date time. And so if you look at the type, so if I look at, let's see here, go in and say insert cell below and say DF2 month.
Type.
What did I do here?
Mm.
Maybe it won't let me do DF2 month. Oh, it's the index. It's the index, so it doesn't have the month value. Well, let's go in and get rid of this guy. Okay, that's what I meant to do here. So let's just go get rid of that. Well, now what it's doing is it's saying, okay, he wants to parse the date, parse this as a date time, but we didn't set it as index. So now we have the standard index, a numerical index. Right now, when we do DF2 month,
I think there is a typo. Yeah.
MONTH, correct, thank you. And now you see that the data type is date time. Okay, whereas when we didn't have parse dates, the data type was object. So it just, that's all it did, is it parsed the date for me.
Okay, so I think I lost in after we delete the column index equal to 0. So what's the difference? So
Okay, so what happens here, what I did here is I just said, okay, read the CSV. Here's the CSV name. I want you to parse dates using the month column. And so when I executed that, it did. It read the file. And then it said in that file, there's month, unemployment rate, jobs added, GDP. It interpreted this column as date, so it created a date series.
yes.
It interpreted this as float, created a float series. This one is float, float series. This is float series, and concatenated them all together. And since I didn't say create an index, I didn't say use any one of the existing columns as an index, it created its own index.
Okay.
And now when I have the index call, I don't remember what the syntax was. It was the index call?
Column.
Like that? It's column?
Yes, equal to 0.
Equals 0. So, okay, use the 0 with column as the index. Have index column in, right? Yeah, I don't remember what it is. Index call, maybe?
Oh,
There we
okay.
go, index call. So this is another parameter for this read CSV, which says, okay, he wants to use one of the columns as the index.
Okay, got you.
As
As
opposed to
the
creating one.
data frames index, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. It makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions for me about this?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I realized something I could just try. I wanted to ask if the index call could take the name of the column instead of the index.
If what now?
I wanted to ask if instead of putting the index number, can we just put the name of the column?
So this one, in this one?
Yes. Yes.
Can we use month here? Like this?
Yes.
I have no idea. Let's take it out. Yeah, we can do that.